Okay, today we're going to talk about circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is our about 24-hour cycle. It's actually a little bit longer, almost 25 hours. Biological cycle that our bodies go through that affects our sleep and wake cycles. So there's different hormones involved in this, and anybody that's had a disrupted sleep schedule, maybe you blame your circadian rhythm, but there's actually other factors likely involved. And our circadian rhythm is pretty regular, but there are things that can throw it off. And one of the things our circadian rhythm kind of needs to basically like readjust itself is daylight. So our brains, our bodies absorb the sunshine that we get when we're outside. And that helps to kind of keep our circadian rhythm in check, because that's what happens basically is when sunlight hits your eyeball, it gets synthesized, and it alters different hormone secretion, including melatonin and even testosterone. And obviously we know about vitamin D synthesis when we get into our skin. And all these things are important as far as controlling our sleep-wake cycle. So if you're not getting enough regular good sunshine, your circadian rhythm could be a little off. So you might want to get outside during the day, get some sunshine, let your circadian rhythm kind of readjust itself, make sure it's in sync. Another thing that affects our sleep-wake cycle is something called sleep pressure. And I very artistically drew a diagram here. So this is kind of a general day. It's obviously not a full 24-hour cycle, but this is kind of like an average day. That's supposed to say 6 a.m. there, 10 p.m. there. So this little ebb and flow thing is kind of our circadian rhythm. And like I said, there's hormones involved like melatonin and cortisol, which regulate how alert and how sleepy we feel. So our cortisol is supposed to kind of peak around 6 a.m., which is usually around our wake time. So you can see it starts getting up there, and it actually dips a little bit. Our cortisol dips a little bit around 2 p.m., and that's when most people feel kind of sleepy. A lot of people blame just, I just had lunch, so my body's digesting that. It's actually just a natural dip in our energy level. Like our bodies have evolved over millennia to kind of rest and recover, because this is usually kind of peak of the day. So we're probably wired to basically find some shade, relax, recharge, so that you can get... Sam's barking at dogs outside. We're basically wired to kind of take a nap or at least relax around this time. So whether you eat or not, you're probably still that kind of like midday dip in energy. It goes up again naturally, and then you can see it starts to trail off again. This is kind of when melatonin is supposed to start kicking in. And melatonin is what makes you more sleepy. A lot of people know about from the supplement, but it's actually a hormone that we make in our body naturally. This straight line starting at 6 a.m. and working its way up is something called sleep pressure. And sleep pressure is, kind of a concept that, again, there's hormones involved in this, but sleep pressure, the longer you're up, the more pressure you're building. So, it's basically like water being filled into this tank. The more water is being filled in, the more pressure in that tank. And if it just keeps getting fuller and fuller, you're going to build up a ton of pressure. And that sleep pressure to us is when we start to get really drowsy. So if anybody's, pulled an all-nighter because you're studying or something, and you've been up for, 24 hours or something, you'll notice that you are extremely tired near the end of that 24 hours. You cannot keep your eyes open no matter what, because that sleep pressure is so strong. There's so many hormones just driving your brain to shut down and go into sleep mode that it's almost impossible to resist. Now, around, I think it's 9 p.m. or so, some people will actually get what's called a second wind, and you may feel pretty tired up until that point, and all of a sudden around 9 or 10 p.m., you kind of get a little bit more alert, a little bit more awake. That's also a natural part of this circadian rhythm and sleep pressure interplay. So there's actually a little bit of a spike of alertness around that time, and we don't actually know why, but it's a natural part. So if you continue to wind down, you continue to go through your sleep routine around that time, that second wind will kind of die down and you'll start getting back into sleep mode. But that sleep pressure outside of that little bump around 9 or 10 p.m. will continue to get higher and higher. So if you try to stay awake for 24 or 48 hours, that sleep pressure is going to be almost impossible to resist. And that's why the longer you're up, the more tired you feel. One interesting thing about circadian rhythms is that they actually change throughout life. So anybody that has kids, especially if they're teenage kids, you may notice that your teenage kid never wants to go to bed when you want to go to bed, which is probably around 9 or 10 p.m. A teenager wants to be up till like 11 or midnight or later. And that's actually because their circadian rhythm is wired that way. A teenager is actually, according to their circadian rhythm, really not supposed to go to bed until maybe 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. even, and have them not wake up until maybe 7 or later. And again, nobody fully knows why, but the theory is that, our old nomadic days when we were hunter and gatherers, when the adults would go to sleep, the teenagers would actually stay up to create social bonds with each other, and maybe that just kind of over enough time got wired into our DNA. But it is a state of nature, and something to keep in mind if you have kids. They're not struggling to go to sleep because they're being, hard, basically. That's just how their circadian rhythm is wired. So best thing you can do for your circadian rhythm is get outside during the daylight so you can get some sunshine, regulate that clock, and then keep a very consistent sleep schedule, what time you go to sleep, so that your clock can stay nice and synchronized. All right, so that's all I got for this one. I will see you in the next video.